Take a look at the life of a small town in Latin America. In the early 1970s, it was the fastest growing metropolis on its continent. Girls in bright dresses walk the streets, shiny cars speed by, and popular Western music can be heard from every corner. And this same city today is Caracas, the capital of Venezuela, one of the most dangerous countries in the world, where most crimes remain unsolved. This is because a third of the local population cannot find work, the currency depreciates by hundreds of % per year, and the government is mired in corruption. In just half a century, Caracas went from an economic miracle to one of the most crisis-stricken places in South America. The reason for this rapid decline was hidden within its depths. It was the huge oil reserves. In Venezuela, they will start extracting it on a large scale in 1914, because it will turn out that Venezuela has more of this oil than anyone else in the world. From 1935, the country will live solely on the export of black gold, and the enormous oil revenues will allow the Venezuelan government to throw money around left and right, and society to turn a blind eye to many unresolved problems. But when oil prices collapse in the 1980s, Venezuela's economy will start to crumble at such a speed that in a few years the country will go from being the richest part of South America to the poorest and most dangerous region on the continent. And Venezuela is far from an exception. Over the past years, oil has toppled dozens of leaders. Today, black gold completely determines global economic policy, remaining the main cause of modern wars. But why are countries with millions of tons of oil and gas beneath their feet mired in their problems? And how have some states managed to avoid the resource curse? In this video, we will explore how oil became the main driver of the global economy and why it can enrich some and destroy others. How to deal with the oil disease, and why do countries sit on trillions of petrodollars and not spend them on current problems? Let's figure it out. The history of oil's rise to the economic Olympus began in the mid-19th century when Canadian doctor and geologist Abraham Gesner extracted a strange liquid from petroleum products which had one important quality. Oboshi okoni ding ieto. It was very bright and burned very well. The new substance, with the posavo uzotem which Abraham patented under the name kerosene, sparked a true cultural revolution. Within a couple of years, kerosene not only replaced gas in street lamps worldwide, but also saved the population of the largest animals on the planet from extinction. After all, in the pursuit of whale oil, the main source of artificial light in the pre-kerosene era, people exterminated hundreds of thousands of animals. But with the discovery of kerosene, killing whales became simply economically unviable. Obtaining the new substance was dozens of times cheaper than sea hunting. With the advent of kerosene, oil finally transformed from a building material and ancient weapon into the most efficient source of lighting, and in a few years people will invent two more methods of processing oil. Thanks to this, Carl Benz will create a car with a gasoline engine, and later another type of engine will be invented by a man with a famous surname, Rudolf Diesel. When the American entrepreneur Henry Ford takes the developments of German inventors, he will release the first car that will sell millions of copies. And then it will become clear that oil takes the place of the main resource of the world economy for many years. And so it happened. By the beginning of the Second World War, control over oil reserves became a key goal for any major power. In fact, one of the reasons for the start of the Great Patriotic War was Germany's desire to gain access to Soviet oil fields on the Caspian Sea coast. When access to Soviet oil was not achieved, and Romania, the main oil supplier for the Third Reich, switched to the anti-Hitler coalition, the German army lost its last chances for victory. Look, all oil powers share exactly the same problem. When your country suddenly discovers oil, you literally become a lucky person who won the lottery. You will surely start selling this oil because your economy simply cannot absorb such a volume. The export of black gold will send a stream of foreign currency directly into your budget's pockets. But to spend this money within your country, you will have to exchange foreign currency for your country's money. And then the exchange rate of your currency will start to strengthen very quickly. At this moment, it will turn out that thanks to the strong currency, it is very convenient to import foreign goods, as they have become much cheaper for you. No need to produce anything yourself, just take and buy quality imports here and now at low prices. And it seems wonderful. The level of consumption is rising. Everyone is getting new iPhones and ordering cars that were once unavailable. But at the same time, domestic businesses not involved in oil extraction or other key resources have to compete with foreigners. And most often, they lose this competition. Now, national goods, both in the domestic and foreign markets, are more expensive simply because the exchange rate of the national currency has increased. As a result, domestic businesses cannot withstand the competition and are bought out by foreign companies. Some might say that's what such a business deserves. After all, that's how competition works. The strongest survive. But if the state lets this process run its course, sooner or later the market is flooded with foreign firms that become major players and dictate their terms. And it seems the state should do everything to prevent this. After all, the most important thing is at stake. The country's economic sovereignty. In Venezuela in the mid-20th century, of course, there were no discussions about budget deficits because there was plenty of money, and the authorities were engaged in endless subsidies, simply plugging holes with oil money. But if they had thought about import substitution, developing other sectors of the economy, everything would have definitely turned out differently. Did they think about that too? So, the Venezuelan government in the 1960s tried to do this. To escape the oil trap, the authorities allocated millions of bolivars to support industry. However, this did not help because businessmen were not fighting to improve product quality and increase production, but for access to these very budget funds. When oil prices dropped in the 1980s, the Venezuelan government cancelled numerous budget transfers, both to businesses and ordinary people. As a result, the country was engulfed in mass riots known as Caracazo. It's not surprising. After all, when you live off a single resource, your entire budget, social stability, and sovereignty depend on unpredictable fluctuations in the price of one global commodity. But wait, there are wealthy oil countries that thrive precisely because of their resources. What's their secret? Because these countries do not spend all their money, but invest it in a separate reserve called a stabilization fund. It's like a cut-off pie. For example, if oil costs more than $50 per barrel or budget revenues from oil sales exceed $1 billion this year, the surplus goes into the stabilization fund. What this rule will be, the governments of the countries determine independently. Thanks to the stabilization fund, additional money from exports is not suddenly injected into the economy, and therefore the problems of the resource curse, which we discussed earlier, do not arise. Although the resource curse is, of course, not only about oil, the once mighty Spanish Empire was destroyed by the influx of gold from conquered Latin America. A little later, Argentina, focusing on agriculture, also lost global competition, left with nothing. In general, dozens of economies in history have collapsed due to focusing on a single resource, and it is clear that oil, which has become the queen of the economy today, is not eternal. According to various estimates, its reserves will last only for the next 50 years, and even if this period lasts longer, sooner or later the same super-rich Qatar may turn back into a desert, and Norway into an unremarkable northern country. And this will happen if the authorities of resource-rich countries do not manage to take advantage of the oil abundance. History shows that resources remain the main source of geopolitical power. Today it's oil, tomorrow it could be something else. But one thing is important. While you enjoy the gifts of the resource curse, it slowly kills your economy.